Howdy, my name is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGameLLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Today we're going to finish off this giant project, the top 100 games of all time, going from 10 to 1 today. All these games are 10s, and I couldn't be happier with any of them. They're incredible games, and I would recommend them in a heartbeat. Without further ado, let's get started. With number 10, Underwater Cities. Now in this game, you are going to be pioneering the ocean floor, building settlements for the overpopulated Earth. Now, in this game, the thing I love about it is the worker placement itself. So on your turn, you'll have 3 tokens, and you can place one of these tokens into a colored area, and that color represents the strength of the action. So if you take a green action, it's pretty weak. If you take red, it's kind of in the middle. Orange is very strong. But to go with this, whenever you go to a space, you'll play a card along with it. If the color matches, which is kind of what you're trying to do, you get to play the card, and it can be an instant effect, an ongoing bonus, endgame scoring, and I love that you're able to kind of weigh your options. And inversely, the cards go backwards. So you have the orange cards are pretty weak, but the orange space is very strong. However, the green cards are super strong, but the green spaces are super weak. So it's really cool. You have to balance what you want to play and what actions you want to take, and you have the competition of the other players to kind of thwart you in addition to this puzzle of the card play. So I really love the card play in this game. It's super satisfying. And one more tidbit to that, the special cards. During the game, you have options. Some of the spaces allow you to add special cards to your hand. These cards have an additional cost to play, and they have the color just like normal, but I love that idea of giving up an action in order to get something better that might propel you forward or give a new strategy in the future. So Underwater Cities, the wonderful card play, the great setting, the lovely pace of the game. Underwater Cities is fantastic. That's my number 10. My number 9 is the smallest game I have today, but it's incredible with the decisions that you're going to have to make. That is Biblios. The Biblios is my number 9, a game about supporting monasteries. Now, the theme seems kind of wonky, but ultimately this is going to be an auctioning game. Weirdly, the game is in 2 halves, similar to a game like For Sale. In the first half, you're just going to be kind of gathering cards. And this could be money cards, this could be the monastery cards themselves, and you're trying to work towards this, towards the goal of having the most monastery cards of a certain color. And my favorite part of this game is the initial phase of the game. So in that first phase, you're selecting cards. In the second phase, you'll be using the cards that you selected to bid. Now, what are you bidding on? That's where this first selection card's in my favorite part of it. On your turn, you're going to draw a card from the top of the deck. You'll have the deck in front of you, you'll draw one card, and you have to decide what to do with it right then and there. You can keep it for yourself. It's a card you really like. This could be really useful. Keep it. The second option is you can put it on the table. The third option is you can put it into a bid pile. So you can only keep one card, and you can only put one card in the bid pile. Everything else has to go face up, and your turn is over once there's a number of cards in the middle equal to the number of players, and you've taken that keep a card, put a card in the bid pile. So here's the twist. You're keeping a card, you're putting one in the bid, but everybody else at the table will take one of those cards that you put face up. So there's a lot of decisions. Every time you look at that card, it's a quick decision, but a meaningful one. You're going to have to decide, is it worth letting the person to my left take this card? Can I risk it? Is it worth keeping this and risking that they might get something way better from the top of the deck randomly? I love that decision. I love the position it puts you in, and the scoring in this game is so wonderful. Some of the cards allow you to manipulate the values of the different monasteries that you're fighting for. So wonderful, so concise in its design, so amazing. This is Biblios, my number 9. Amazing game. Number 8. So we went to the oceans in Underwater Cities. This time we are going to space. And this is number 8, Terraforming Mars. In Terraforming Mars, you play a corporation that is interested in terraforming Mars. But you are trying to get the most points out of this. Now, points, money, fame, all of this in the name of making Mars livable, because it's going to benefit you as well. Now, I love the whole premise of this game. Every card is scientifically based. They're all theories, things that are actually happening. Playing this game with my dad is a lot of fun because he grew up when a lot of these theories and whatnot were happening. So I really enjoyed listening to him kind of ogling over the cards. And in general, this game, the heart of this game is the card play. Every card is unique, and my favorite thing about the game itself are how the cards interact. So you have 4 different types of cards normally. The first card is a event card. You play it, you do its effect, you put it down, nothing. The green cards, you play them, they stay face up for some bonuses, and then they're done. The blue cards, when you play them, they're continuous effects that you can use every round. And the last type of card are your corporations themselves. And these provide you an ability that is unique and will kind of set you on a plan. And it's really cool. They're very thematic, everything, because say you are, one of the coolest one is a film industry. Your whole thing is you're trying to play these big event cards, and every time you do, you record and you capture it, and it's great news, it's great entertainment, so you get extra money every time you do so. So you're encouraged to play these big bombastic turns that are one-time use, but hey, you're here, the explosion is the art, right? Stuff like that. So I love the different corporations that are involved in this game. The card play itself is really fascinating. Money is the main resource you'll be using in this game, but in order to play a card, you have to pay for the rights to own the patent, essentially. So whenever you take a card, it's called a project card, and you have to pay $3, I think, $3 to keep the card. And that might not seem a lot, but if you see a lot of cards that you like and you keep all of them, suddenly every round you're getting 4, you might pay $12, and $12 might be enough to buy a card on its own. So you have to really prioritize what's going to be good right now, what's worth saving, what's worth spending money on. And it's really interesting to think of it in the grand scheme of things, because the game might be over before the card you play becomes efficient. Super intense, super cool theme, super fun to play, and it's really satisfying to watch your empire grow over Mars. So I love Terraforming Mars. This is my number 8. My number 7 is Brass Birmingham. Another card-driven game where you are going to be in the Industrial Revolution. Your job is to create connections and networks in order to ship goods and fulfill them to make the most money, ultimately, and the most points, which is, I guess, flipping of industries, so actually making sales. So this game shines in its straightforward nature, but its opportunistic, I guess, gameplay. So my favorite thing in this game is the card play. So on your turn, you're always having to use one of the cards in your hand. And the cards have 2 different types. So there's a location card, which lets you get into any of the industries at a specific location. And the other type of card is a type of industry. It lets you do a specific type of industry as long as you're connected to it. And I find this really fascinating because every turn you're committing a card to do something. Generally, those cards are not going to relate to what you're doing on the board, but a lot of times they will. Whenever you're building, the icon or the city has to match. So I love the tense decision of having to think, will I need this later? Do I need this now? Is it a good time to use this? And there's even some cool ways that you can replace cards in your hand to get better ones. Very similar to Underwater Cities, where you can kind of upgrade the cards in your hand. There's another action in here where you can trade some cards to get wilds. And I really like that concept that there's always a way to do what you want in this game. It just might cost you some actions or some money. So this game is so interesting. My other favorite thing about this is the resources. Every time you produce a resource, it goes on a tile. And this resource is up for public use. So it might be good to let other opponents use this resource. It saves them money, but it's going to flip your tile, which will generate you income and points. So is it worth it to let that happen, just so you can flip that tile and get some passive income? Or do you need to build that industry so you can use those resources right away? Or do you want them to sell right away? It's really fascinating how there's a lot of strategies to use, and you can be really opportunistic on using your opponent's goods, as well as putting yourself in a position where you can generate goods and use them in the same turn without even having to worry about the opponents messing with them. So there's a lot to love in Brass. The fact that this game offers a lot more variability than Lancashire allows it on this list. Whenever I do teach the game, I'll sometimes teach Lancashire first, which is the kind of original version of this game. It's got less industries, but this game itself has a lot more options with the industries. And so I vastly prefer Brass Birmingham, especially the wild and the lone system and the variability altogether. So another wonderful game. This is Brass Birmingham, my number 7. My number 6 is gigantic. It's the biggest game I own. It takes up the most space in this house, but its gameplay is so interesting and very different. A huge world all to itself. This is Kingdom Death Monster. The Kingdom Death Monster is a game where you play a settlement of survivors. and your job is to do just that, survive against the darkness. Darkness is full of horrors and monsters and nightmares, and you have to discover these things, learn about them, adapt, overcome, survive. This game is inspired a lot by the Monster Hunter video games. A lot of the times you'll be going out into the wilderness, hunting a creature, and you will scavenge its body for loot and body parts, and you'll create armor, you'll create weapons, you'll create medicines out of the pieces that you get. My favorite part of this game is the combat itself. The game is a boss battling game. The flow of the game goes settlement phase, you'll be able to do things at your home, and then you go on a hunt where you're going to be chasing down a quarry, so you'll be looking for something. And then the last part of the game is the hunt itself, the showdown. So you'll be fighting the creature that you've decided to go after. Now the showdown is really fascinating because each of the monsters has its own AI deck that makes it act differently and behave differently and have different ways to hit it, ways it attacks. It is so fascinating, and different terrain that show up. They did such a good job with designing the different creatures, the way they interact, and this has one of my favorite types of cards. They have what are called hit locations. So normally in a game, you roll dice, you see if it hits, it does damage. And this game, when you hit something, you get to see what you hit. For example, say you're fighting a lion, you might hit it in the knee. You'll see what happens when you hit it in the knee. If sometimes it'll just deal damage, it might have a reaction where it'll pounce back, or it might have a reaction where you hit it really well and it'll fall down, or you might critically wound it and shatter the monster's knee. And every turn now it has an opportunity to fall down because you've shattered that knee, or decreases its movement. It could have a lasting effect. You might even do an action where you get gobbled up or something incredible happens. I'm not going to spoil a lot of this because a lot of this game is the adventure and the discovery. It's getting punished, learning the hard way, and rolling with the punches. It has some very lasting effects that happen in this game. Your survivors you use are not you. They are people that are all working together in the same settlement. So don't get attached, because these survivors can get trauma that stays with them for a long time. They might break their leg. They might lose an eye. They might suddenly get a disorder that cripples them for a long time. The personalization, the really cool concepts that are translated into gameplay, Kingdom Death Monster does it all. And that's why it's my number 6, Kingdom Death Monster. My number 5 is another adventure-style game. This is Too Many Bones. Now, I'm just showing you the front of the trove chest, but Too Many Bones is a gigantic game. Very similar to Kingdom Death Monster. It has a lot of components, a lot of expansions that have been made for it, and the component quality is out of this world. They use this incredible dice, neoprene mats, everything. It's a chip theory game, and they are known for their quality, and it's shown the best on this game, I believe. Now, Too Many Bones has you playing a gearlock, or a party of gearlocks. It's a cooperative game. You're going to be going out to take down a tyrant. Now, this tyrant will have its own special quirks and a group of minions that follow it. So you'll construct the minions for the adventure based on what the tyrant has. Now, these minions all have really interesting effects, and there's a huge list of them. This is another game similar to Cloudspire, where it does reward you if you put in the time to learn it. But the effects themselves are easy enough to manage. Most creatures have maybe 1 or 2, and a lot of them make a lot of sense. But where this game really shines is the character customization. So my favorite part are the gearlocks themselves. Each character will get a sheet, and this sheet has all sorts of information on their gearlock. And that sheet of paper could sometimes be a game on its own. It's a little complicated, but when you look at it, when you learn it, and you start playing, you're allowed to go down path to path to path and pick a character that you want to develop and you want to have fun with. You could be a ranged attacker that focuses on big blasts and only does a little bit of damage every round, or you could be a healer, or you could be instead of healing people, you are a doctor that poisons people. You can do all sorts of things in this game, and the new gearlocks they keep adding are just more and more fun. They have this bard character that I think is a blast. You can play music, and every time you play, you can pick what kind of songs you're going to choose. And each path has its lines written on it, so it's kind of like a tech tree. You'll be moving down it, picking the areas that you want to improve your skills in. Fantastic. Too Many Bones is a wonderful adventure game. It's one of my favorites, and it's my number 5. My number 4 is Maracaibo. Maracaibo has you a pile of mercenaries, and you are going to be exploring, adventuring, fighting, and and I guess conquesting in the Caribbean. Your job is to make the most points as you can, and points come from the allies that you make along the way, the explorations that you participate in, and the different conflicts that are occurring. So Maracaibo is a heavy card game where you are going to be moving around the board, using these cards for multiple things, whether it be selling goods or as actual people that you're recruiting onto your ship, or you can use them as ways to complete quests. And this game does a lot with a little. I think it's so well done. Everything is on the cards, and the cards really propel this game forward. Now, this game shines in its customization from turn one. Every time you do an action, you're able to remove discs from this main board. When you do that, it customizes your ship to whatever you like it to be. In addition, the cards, each card you play is going to be a little bit different. They're going to make you different from each other person at that table. They're going to interact with the board. They may change the board. And it's just so fun to kind of look and find combos that you want to use. This game is very open. You can choose any path you like. At the start of the game, they do give you some little objectives that you may follow. You can completely ignore them, or you could decide to do them and something else. So there's a lot of flexibility, and there's a lot of fun to be had in Maracaibo. The theme is great. I love the idea of sailing around and you're constantly getting these crew members to help you out. And the coolest thing about this is an awesome way to include a narrative in a game. They have a small deck of story cards that you'll be using, and every time you play, that story will add new components. It'll add new islands to explore. It'll add weather. It'll add a bit of a story injected into your gameplay in a very seamless way, and you don't need the same people to play every round. Your game is constantly evolving, adding new cards. This is such a wonderful experience, a wonderful game, and I would never turn it down. So play some sea shanties in the background, and I'll sail with you anytime, Maracaibo. This is my number 4. My number 3 is Blood Rage. Now, Blood Rage is a game where you are fighting during Ragnarok. The end of the world has happened. Your job is to fight and die in battle to go on to Valhalla. So your job here is to get the most glorious possible while preventing the others from ascending to the level that you have reached. In this game, you play a Viking clan whose whole purpose is to fight gloriously and die gloriously. So this game is so fascinating. It's very steeped in the Viking mythology. Super cool. The Norse gods are here, the different monsters from Ymir to Fenrir. You have all of these really cool interactions with the different characters. And at the heart of this game, it is a drafting game. This drafting combined with the giant creatures and the movement on the map makes for an incredible experience. So my favorite part of the game is the drafting, the card play itself. And every round you'll get 8 cards in your hand that you'll pick a total of 6 from as you pass from player to player. And these cards are all insanely powerful. And that's my favorite part of this. Every card you take, you feel pretty amazing about taking it, but it's got that same tension of, wow, there's one card that I picked, but there are 6 that I gave away that are incredible. And I love that decision of you're using these cards to kind of set up your plan for the round, and then you see how it goes. As you interact to the other players on the board, you kind of pivot from place to place, trying to enact your strategy. And the whole monsters in the game are just a lot of fun to use. Whenever you summon a monster, you feel very powerful because, once again, every card is powerful. Now, my favorite part of this game is the variance of win conditions. So there's many different ways to increase your standing in the game. The first way is through battle. Go figure. If you are pillaging the areas on the map, you're going to be increasing your clan's stats in order to get even stronger. You can also get points by dying. Maybe you invoke the help of Loki and you're getting points every time your characters die. Or maybe you live just to dominate the land and you want to just be on the board and fulfill quests. In addition to all of this, Ragnarok's happening, right? And if you happen to die in Ragnarok, you get extra points. You can kind of combo all of these things in one fell swoop to really generate the most points possible. And I love everything about this game. I love the interaction with the players. I love that the turns are short. I love that you have this amazing board presence. The miniatures are fantastic. The mythology is present and amazing. The artwork by Adrian Smith is incredible, and the design by Eric Lang is so good. This is probably my favorite drafting game. This is my favorite drafting game. What are we talking about? This is number 3. So my favorite drafting game, my favorite dudes on a map game, my favorite combat-centric game, This is Blood Rage. Incredible. Number 3. Now my last 2 games are, I had a very tough time choosing between these, but number 2 is gonna go to Arkham Horror, the living card game. Now, I love card games. As if you haven't noticed, most of these games on my top 10 have been card games outside of Too Many Bones and Kingdom Death Monster. But Arkham Horror, the living card game, puts you in the position of an investigator during the 1920s, 1930s. You are in that Lovecraftian era. However, it puts it into a huge campaign that you are going to be constructing a deck with and upgrading that deck as you play. So you can pick a scenario, or sorry, a campaign that you want to play, and you take this character that you've chosen, that you've customized the deck for, and you follow them through that campaign. This game does so much with the deck of cards, and I love it. You can go on a train, you can go underwater, you can go to the jungles, you can go to the dream world. There's so many different ways to play this game, so many different ways to customize it into an experience that you really enjoy, and the cooperation in this game is fantastic. My favorite part about this game is the scenarios themselves. So every time you play, you're going to be told to get a couple of sets of cards from your collection. And when you grab those sets, some of them you might be familiar with, and some of them might be specific to a scenario. And when you do that, you'll be able to kind of anticipate what's coming up, but also have this new infusion of these new cool cards. So you have some familiar and some brand new. And each scenario has its own kind of plot that you're going to be playing through. It's got its own arc. It has an act and a scene deck. It has an agenda that the game is trying to do to try to push you back, and you have your own act that you're trying to go through to make sure that you are you're figuring out this mystery that's happening. And each scenario itself introduces new mechanics, new mechanisms, new creatures, new things, and just fun things. On repeat plays, it's still enjoyable because it's a card game, because it's prepared for this. It has ways to make things different, still add that exploration, still add that excitement of trying to figure out what's happening and what's next. Arkham Horror, the living card game, is an incredible experience. The deck building is a lot of fun. The gameplay itself is wonderful. The cooperation is on point. My number 2, Arkham Horror, the living card game. And my number 1 is another living card game. This is Marvel Champions. So Marvel Champions is, I really struggle between this and Arkham Horror, but Marvel Champions, I just play all the time. I play it on my own. I play it with other people. It is incredible. This game lets you feel like a superhero. And what more can you want, right? You pick a Marvel character that you want to play. You pick a scenario that you want to go against, and you're ready to go. I love that about this game. It's so easy to pick up a deck of cards, to throw in a scenario that you want to play it, have a blast, and be done and move on. And a lot of times, you'll just play another one. This game is so easy to get to the table. It is so fun, and it feels like you're that superhero. So the fact that you can be Captain America, you're throwing your shield, or you can be Thor, and you are lightning striking everybody on the board. And I love that you're constantly getting new heroes to beat. Every month they release a new pack for this game that introduces new villains, it introduces new heroes. They just released Quicksilver recently, and that's been a blast. It's spinning around and running around as fast as you can to defeat your enemies. They are so creative in their designs. They take this idea of this card game, they make the mechanics work to make you feel like this hero in this space they've designed, and they're always opening it up to new innovations. I'm super excited for everything they have to do for this game. My favorite stuff for this game right now is I love the new stuff they came out with last year, the Kang Adversary Pack, the Ant-Man, the Ant-Man Hero Pack. They really kind of turn things on their head with the way heroes are switching to their alter egos, and I love the different variety and the storylines that come from the different villains you fight. There's a lot to love about this game. My favorite thing about the game is definitely oh man, there's so much. I love the card play, I love the customization, and I love the scenario structure. What more can I say? If you are a fan of superheroes, this has to be a game that you get. Marvel Champions, the card game, my number 1. This gets a side game strong for sure. This is incredible. Marvel Champions, my number 1 game of all time. Thank you so much for joining me for this. I know it's been a long time, and I really appreciate you sticking around for this. If you have any questions about the list, or you'd like to share your own games that you love, please leave so in the comments. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you so much again. Side Game Strong.